Yo, welcome back, guys. Week 7 live stream here. We're doing cashing points. My guy Scott is here. We got John Proctor back, and I promise he's actually here. He has not morphed himself into the fantasy points avatar, but this is fantastic. We got Proctor back on the show. Guys, fun slate. 11 games. We got 4 teams on bye. We got Josh Allen gone, Patrick Mahomes gone. So it's a fun slate, wide open slate. Scott, how's it going, man?
It's good. That was a pathetic intro for a Johnny week. Come on, you got to bring the heat, show a little excitement. I know Johnny's beautiful face isn't here, but
Scott, you know me well enough. My excitement scale starts at a 1 and stops at like a 3. So that was a 3 for me. So that was as good as it gets.
I mean, Bills aren't on the main slate, so maybe that's what it is, But I'm excited. Johnny, who recently gave birth, or at least his wife did, to a newborn baby boy. Johnny, what's going on? How are you?
Man, excited that I don't have to remind myself mentally to look at the camera. I can just look wherever I want and
you just didn't want to put on a shirt. Be honest.
I even my hair is done. I'm wearing a shirt. It's like the nicest I've looked in, on a day off in months.
This show is famous for having the most female listeners and diehards, and it's because of all these handsome boys on this show. It's called amongst the women in the industry the Handsome Boys podcast. So this is a disappointment for everyone.
Yeah, I know it is. It truly is.
We have 2 female viewers, which puts us in the top 1%.
I was gonna say 3. So maybe it truly is 2, but we appreciate all the ladies and gentlemen that are.
You're right. It is 3.
Okay, we've checked the numbers, and it's 3. All right.
The ladies wanted Johnny's face. They wanted Sergeant Oak back with my glorious mustache. Shout out to Sharon. And but yeah, Johnny was always the brains of the operation. So as long as he's here in spirit and audio form.
By the way, I just realized, Ben, Scott's name is wrong. We need to get it changed here to Sergeant Oak. So we need it on that as soon as possible here. But nah, good to have the crew back. Good to have you back, Johnny. Let's get to it. Let's talk through week 7 here. We got 11 games, like I said, fun slate because we've got no Mahomes, we got no Allen, no Hurts. And I mean, I think for basically the entire season, if you've been clicking Allen or Hurts in your lineups, you've been printing money. So this is a wide open slate, and I'm really looking forward to it.
You said no Mahomes. Mahomes is on the slate.
Oh, sorry. I meant to say Hurts. My bad. I got Chiefs on the brain here.
He meant to say the 2020 version of Mahomes is not on the slate.
The Tyreek version, yeah.
Yeah, true. Fair enough. Yeah, let's get started here, boys. Falcons, Bengals. Bengals are 6-point favorites. Over-unders 47.5. No real injury news on either side of the ball. I will say Bengals run defense got absolutely destroyed last week with no DJ Reader. They have a few injuries along their defensive line. I haven't had a chance to look this morning to see where they're at. But, we know what the Falcons are going to do. They're going to come out here and run the ball here, Scott. Problem is, it's just a dead team for fantasy. So we should probably just talk through the Bengals. Burrow and Chase got there last week. Burrow was QB1. Chase was wide receiver 1. And they fall into another really, really good spot here. So we're going to start with Joe Burr, Chase. T. Higgins is coming back off an ankle injury. He played last week, but he was really limited. I watched that whole game. His route tree was very, very limited. So he should be a little bit closer.
Breaking news, Dobbins will undergo knee surgery.
Whoa.
Wow.
Dang.
But anyways, back to the Falcons.
Jesus Christ, man. Poor guy. I will never forgive the Ravens for putting him out there last preseason in that game.
I remember talking to Brett on the phone. For those who don't know, Brett Whitefield is our data guy, also the smartest film expert I know besides Greg Cassell. And he was gushing over the Kenyon Drake landing spot. And it seems so weird to me. It's no, you don't understand. This is the perfect schematic fit for his skill set. And he did go off last week. So we'll revisit that when we discuss that game.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, back to Bengals here. Scott, I was just teeing you up for Burrow and Chase and your thoughts on this game. I know last week we finally saw Cincinnati come out and throw it a ton. They led the league in pass rate over expectation, actually. We've seen Taylor do this in the past where they come out and be real aggressive, and then the next week he becomes a turtle. But this is a great spot, though.
Yeah, I'm kind of more interested in Johnny's thoughts just because he's our resident pseudo doctor, but he's also like has one of the best hit rates when it comes to navigating these tricky injury situations. Because like you said, T. Higgins, I do not think is fully healthy, although he had a full workload last week. But Jamar Chase is dealing with a hip injury as well. But on paper, you should really love both of these guys. AJ Terrell was awesome last year, but he's really struggled when shadowing this season. So I don't know if he's going to shadow or not, but Casey Hayward is also out. His backup comes in. So this is a really favorable matchup for the two perimeter wide receivers. I think if Higgins, what I knew was fully healthy, would be the best play on the slate. Prior to last week where he had 9 targets, a full snap share, he was averaging 18.9 fantasy points per game over his prior 13 healthy games. That would rank 15th best at the position. That's more than Jamar Chase over his last 13 games. And again, it's an amazing matchup. But then if you want to say Chase is significantly healthier than Higgins is, that was the thesis behind why I was so high on Chase last week. It's like we saw when Higgins left early in week 1 and week 5, and then last week when he was clearly not right, Chase was averaging, 15 targets per game and just absolutely shredding and carving defenses up with a uniquely low ADOT with a lot of opportunities after the catch. So I really like both. I like Joe Burrow, Cincinnati, their highest pass rate over expectation since that insane hot streak when Burrow was averaging like 50 fantasy points per game. And then Joe Mixon's in play as well. That's who Darren might be his favorite play of the slate. And I get the arguments like he's been my top XFP regression candidate since week 1, basically. And he was to start last year too. And I kept riding with him and he kept, posting these 30-point games at low ownership. But yeah, Johnny, what are your thoughts on the health of these two wide receivers?
Obviously, I think this is the healthiest Higgins has been in the last 3 weeks or so. He full practice today, but I still don't think he's going to be 100% for a while. And he's like, the risk that you run with him is the second he aggravates this, he's just like, he's gone. It's a 0. But I think he's a guy that I'm much more comfortable playing now than I was the last 2 weeks. And Chase, I think Chase is fine. I wouldn't really be concerned about him. I'm more concerned about the pace of this game. Bengals are going to be missing their top 2 run defenders, and the Falcons are just gonna run the ball like they do every week. I think 47 is way too high of a total this week. And if this is going to be popular, if people like last week, I loved Burrow and Chase with, especially with Higgins active. I had talked to everyone in our Discord, that was a great spot to get on where, Chase was going to be chalkier than expected until Higgins was active. But this is a week where if people are going to be in on Burrow, I think Burrow is going to be really, really popular because we don't have these other guys after a big week last week. So I think I'm probably just not going to be on the Bengals this week. I might play Mixon.
Yeah, well, that's actually what I was about to bring up, Johnny, is your thoughts on Mixon. Just looking through early ownership projections, Burrow is like top 2 in everybody that I trust, including ours. So, yeah, you're right. Burrow's probably going to get steamed up. That was my next question is, Mixon's coming off like an 8-9 carry game where he just completely died. Now, Falcons or Bengals are huge home favorites here. I think Mixon's set up pretty well, and, he's at a pretty palatable cost here, Scott.
Who's that, Mixon?
Yeah, 7K.
Yeah, I kind of side with Johnny where I think this entire game goes over-owned. Atlanta, I really worry about pace. But, this is Darren's guy, and Darren's been killing it with these contrarian plays. And like I said, he's seeing like the best workload of any running back in fantasy. It's just not translating to actual production. But we know he's good. We saw what he did last year. And it's probably just a matter of time before he scores 30+ in a game with the right game script and the donkey head coach leans super run heavy. And maybe it's this week. I will just say on the other side, I'm not going to play Alamides Zaccheaus, but he was popping in some matchup stuff. Cincinnati. Oh, and Kyle Pitts, 4,300. Like, he's a great contrarian play in the sense that we know he's really good. He has unique upside. Cincinnati has the best perimeter cornerback core in football right now on paper. No one's going to play him because he burned all their redraft teams. But yeah, I'm probably not going to play any of them.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I just think Falcons are dead, man, for fantasy. That includes Pitts and London. I mean, just nobody can survive under quarterbacks throwing it 12 times a game. It's just not possible. All right, good game here, guys. Moving forward, Lions, Cowboys. Cowboys are 7-point favorites. Over under 48. Obviously, we're going to get Dak back this week. A little bit of a surprise on the Cowboys side. Dalton Schultz I guess he tweaked his knee on Saturday and walked through. It was kind of a surprise that he was back in full practice on Wednesday. He's clearly injured, dealing with this PCL injury, but he should play. Lions side, DeAndre Swift is still limited. Don't love to see that. I would have loved to see him practicing in full this week, but he should play. And good news, Amon-Ra St. Brown is practicing in full. Proctor, I'll kick it to you first, man. I want to go all in on this game, but there's a few concerns. First and foremost, like Dak is obviously coming off a long injury layoff, and I'm typically very conservative. That being said, the spot is fantastic. So what are your thoughts here on Dak in this game in general?
I think Dallas spanks the Lions. And I think the Lions are getting a little too much credit. We saw the wheels fall off last time we saw the Lions when they were missing, their pieces. And if DeAndre Swift and Amon-Ra, I don't think either of them are 100% at this point. Seems like they'll both play, but how healthy are they? And then I think Shark is still a few weeks away. And, I just don't think this is as good of a Lions team as we were sort of targeting earlier in the season. So I think this game could be a bit underwhelming, but I also think they want to get Dak going, especially after, all the Cooper Rush nonsense that was going on. Jerry Jones probably wants to put that to bed. So I could see, Dak throwing, 5 touchdowns, even though the Lions put up like 10 points. So I think Dak's a great play. CD's, pacing the league in target share. I think he'll continue to do that. But I think the contrarian play is to, play Zeke and the Cowboys defense, because this is still a, top 5 defense against a garbage Lions team.
Yeah, so I think I disagree with you, Johnny. I really like Detroit. I was a doubter on Detroit, and then they broke the slate without Amon-Ra St. Brown, without, a number of key players. Granted, they flopped the next week against New England, but there's just like massive tournament upside there. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown is a must-play wide receiver. If you just look at what he's done over his last 8 healthy games, he's averaging 26.3 fantasy points per game, 11.4 targets per game. Both of those numbers are above Cooper Kupp, and yet he's 2,500 cheaper than Cooper Kupp. This was an Exodia wide receiver for me in redraft, so I'm just going to stubbornly not back off of that because he's done nothing to prove that otherwise. He practiced in full all week thus far. DeAndre Swift is a little interesting as a GPP play. In his last 4 healthy games, I think he's been over 130 rushing yards and 3 receptions. But I'm probably not going to play him just because he's limited in practice still. And, even if he's healthy, there's the risk of the other running back cutting into work, Jamal Williams.
But Amon-Ra himself says his ankle is not 100%.
Oh, okay. I missed that. You'll have to send me that tweet, please.
He says it's 90%.
Okay. So 90% healthy Amon-Ra St. Brown is above any other wide receiver on this slate by a margin. If that, and granted, it's probably 80% because these guys exaggerate. You can't really do the math that way. And Josh Reynolds has been decent, whatever.
He's hurt.
Yeah. So I'm gonna just must play cash lock button play St. Brown, but admitted there's injury risk. I just think at this price, it's more than baked in, and ownership more than baked in. Dallas, by the way, has far and away the best pass rush in football, so that could be a concern. But I think that could help Amon-Ra St. Brown as that low ADOT check down. On the Dallas side, I don't know that CeeDee Lamb is healthy. This hip injury could be pretty concerning. Jesse Morse did a video that was a little interesting in that regard. CeeDee Lamb's going to be probably the chalkiest wide receiver of the slate. I don't really like it. I just don't. CeeDee Lamb averaged 18 fantasy points per game in Cooper Rush starts, 6 total starts. He averaged like 8 fantasy points per game over Dak Prescott's last 6 starts. Dalton Schultz beat him by XFP in 4 of the last 4, much higher fantasy points per game total. So he's interesting as a contrarian play. But I mean, that PCL really has me worried. I just think that concern isn't really baked into what ownership's going to look like. And if I'm just being honest, I don't think I like CeeDee Lamb for cash, even though he's probably going to be the first wide receiver people play.
I think if you're not playing him in cash, you just shouldn't play cash. Well,
He's hurt. He doesn't do well with Dak Prescott.
I'm just saying the risk reward. I mean, he's going to be the highest owned wide receiver on the DraftKings slate. So if you're not going to play him, I think you should just play tournaments.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like the 2 highest owned, at least in terms of projection right now, the 2 highest owned guys right now are Lamb and Lockett, and both have injury concerns.
I hate Lockett.
I know. You were right about Lockett last week too. I mean, I think that was more so just the Cardinals couldn't do shit, but we'll get to that. Scott, your point. I was with you on like Wednesday. I was like, damn, dude, I think the Lions could cover here. They're getting +7. You know, Lions have been the best team against the spread in the league. I am a little concerned about Amon-Ra. I'm actually more concerned about Micah Parsons just taking this game over. I mean, Jared Goff is like one of the most pressure-sensitive quarterbacks in the game, and the Cowboys lead the league in pressure rate. I'm actually more concerned about Goff not responding well to pressure. I'm more concerned about that than Dak's injury, because I think the Cowboys have actually, while they fucked up a bunch of stuff with their guys that are hurt, I think they've actually done the right thing with Dak here and giving him a right amount of time. But yeah, man, I kind of, as the week has gone on, I've gone more towards Proctor's side, where I think Dallas cruises here. What do you think about the backs? Are Zeke and Pollard in play at all as leverage?
I think Zeke is a really good contrarian play, and I think you pair him with the Dallas defense because they're expensive on DraftKings. No one's going to play them, but with the pricing that we have this week, like I built a few Zeke Dallas teams. They're easy to fit. You know, everyone's going to play the Jets D, you know, because they're like the punt D, but this isn't really a week where you really need it.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah. I wrote up start sit this week too. This is like the one spot, man, where like I wanted to be on Zeke. He definitely has a double dong potential in this spot.
And to Scott's point, I think you can play Amon-Ra, Zeke, and Dallas defense. Because if the Detroit just gets dusted, I mean, Amon-Ra could really rack up the targets. And Parsons is a guy that, like, if they're up by 21, he's not going to play as much in the fourth quarter.
Yeah. I mean, Dallas, shout out to Tom Brawley for the stat, but the Cowboys are 10-1 against the spread in their last 11 games with the team that has a losing record. And that's obviously includes, you know, a couple games where Dak has been out. This team's been really good, man. They don't play down to bad teams. Like they play down to good teams. That's Mike McCarthy. But they've been really good against bad teams. And I think the Lions might be a bad team this week.
Yeah, Zeke was popping and like everything, just like the matchup's great. He's a little underpriced, touchdown upside. I don't know that I'm going to play him. I don't even know that I'm going to write him up. It's just like such a gross committee backfield to me. And yeah, getting Dak back is a boost. I don't know. I'll have to think that one over. I actually wrote up my article, like 80% of it last night, which was unique for me. The one section I didn't even touch is GPP quarterbacks, and it's just tricky for me. And so I don't really know where I stand right now on Goff and Prescott, but those were 2 options I was strongly considering.
I think Dak will be pretty popular.
It's amazing. It's an amazing matchup on paper.
I mean, if Lamb is going to be chalked, then people are going to just click in Dak. That's for sure.
Yep.
If Lamb's 40%, then I mean, Dak's going to be at least 15.
He's a good play though, and I think it would be interesting to play like Dak and Gallup.
I would play him with Schultz at a mandatory, and then probably Gallup for leverage. Yeah.
Yeah, man. My thing is, I don't know if Schultz is healthy. Like
that PCL is a big deal.
Yeah. I mean, that's what Zeke played through last year, right? So, yeah. All right, guys.
He's never been an athletic guy to begin with, so maybe he goes from like 2006 Jason Witten to 2009 Jason Witten.
Hey, man, he's no Kyle Pitts, but he outscores Kyle Pitts. So
that is true. Well, that list is long, but I think this week I think it's a mistake to play mid-range tight ends, like the 5K guys, because we're gonna have a bunch of these 2,500, 3,000 guys, and then you have Kelsey and Andrews at the top. So guys like Schultz, I'm just gonna exclude.
Yeah, there's it's like total barbell pricing with tight end. We've got Dulcich, who's going to be mega chalk. Otten's going to be chalk. We'll get there though.
My pool is like 10 tight ends deep this week. It's crazy.
You like all the tight ends. By the way, in chat, I'm not betting Cowboys, guys. Like that's not. I'm not putting down 7 points on the Cowboys. All I was saying is I just think they're in a good spot here.
I think if you can get, I've seen 6.5 some places. I'd be okay with 6.5, but I wouldn't take 7.
Yeah. All right, Colts Titans here, guys. Titans are 3-point favorites. Over under 42.5. I'll be stunned if Jonathan Taylor doesn't play. It's all trending that way. It was trending towards him.
We'll start.
Last week.
We'll start. For Zach Kiefer, he will start.
Yeah, there you go.
14.
So we'll get JT back. Proctor, I'll toss it right over you, man. I mean, Derrick Henry's been owning souls, including mine. Titans are 3-point favorites. Should be good game script. And by the way, I mean, this is a spot where Henry's crushed. I mean, he's averaging 130 scrimmage yards on 25.6 touches per game over his last 7 against the Colts here. Keep in mind, Colts have had a really good run defense. So, I mean, this Titans team has just had Henry's just had this Colts team's number. So what do we think about Henry? What do we think about this game? And, I mean, there's 2 great backs in this game. I think this is even though the total's low, this is still a pretty good game.
Yeah, this is an interesting one because it's theoretically when both teams are healthy on defense, they're both pass funnels. But it looks like Shaq Leonard will miss again. Colts defense has really kind of just struggled when he doesn't play for the most part. And I think he was out when Henry played them in week 4, or at least he was limited, one or the other. And that was one of Henry's better games. And then it's like, of course, Taylor has to come back. The like literal worst matchup you can possibly, like the Titans is like the worst team for running backs because they just get dusted through the air and they allow nothing on the ground. So I don't know. I don't know if it's like I want to play JT the first week back, but this is just a spot that I don't love. Divisional matchup, second divisional matchup of the year. Titans not allowing much on the ground at the Titans. I feel like this game could just be like disgusting.
Yeah, I looked into this. I mean, because I thought the same thing, Proctor, like thinking of this matchup. But since 2019, these games have actually averaged 50 combined points, and they've beaten the closing total by like an average of 4 points. There's been some really bad games, like the last one they played. There's been a few shootouts too. And wasn't Pittman hurt in the last game they played against each other? Or was that the Jags game I'm thinking of?
Yeah, I think it was healthy.
Yeah, you're right. I just pulled it up. Yeah, it's a Jags game. But yeah, man, I think if Henry can break this game and break this slate wide open with a long run. So I still think there's a little shootout appeal here.
Johnny, who do you think the highest owned quarterback is going to be in cash this week? Geno?
Lamar.
Okay. Why isn't it Matt Ryan?
Because he sucks, dude.
He ranks second in passing yards per game. But between Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, the Titans are giving up the most passing yards per game. No one is talking about him. The number 1 fantasy points play of the week, just like a guy we're 10 points higher on our projections, is Alec Pierce. And digging into that just seems perfect. Tennessee's done a really good job of stopping opposing wide receiver ones while giving up a ton of production to perimeter wide receiver twos who excel as deep threats. So we saw that in week 3, Mac Hollins, 30 fantasy points. We saw that in week 4, Alec Pierce himself, 80 yards on just 15 routes. And then the next week, Diami Brown, 24.5 fantasy points. There's certainly some risk here, but everything on paper, this matchup is just an obscene smash spot. And he's good. I like this kid a lot. Tennessee, just brutal defense. So I like Matt Ryan. I think he's in play in cash. I love Alec Pierce. He's risky, but I think he's in play in cash. I might have 100% exposure in GPPs.
So I'm with you, Scott. What I really like this week, I really like the Derrick Henry and then a Colts wide receiver mini stacks. Because Tennessee is the premier pass funnel. Like, they are the premier pass funnel in the NFL right now, but we get freaking, Matt Ryan. So I like the Colts receivers. I like the idea that this game can go over. Matt Ryan is now 7,300 on DraftKings. I don't think I can pay 7,300 for him. I wish this was a week where we could play Matt Ryan and like use him to pay up for.
Wait, who's 7,300?
He's 7,300 on FanDuel. Sorry.
Oh no, yeah, he's not playing FanDuel.
And he's 5,400 on DraftKings. But this isn't a week where you get to use him to pay. Like, who are you paying up for by using Matt Ryan?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's like the worst week to use him, and he gets the Titans pass funnel. So I mean, that's my issue with it. But I really I'm with you on Pierce. I like Pittman too, and I like pairing them with Henry. I think you could honestly play both of them with Henry and still play another quarterback and be okay.
Wait, Brock, I'm stunned you're not on your boy Paris Campbell. What's up, man? You have a child, and then you don't go back to your boy Paris.
Oh man, I don't know who's gonna score less fantasy points per snaps played between Paris Campbell and Kyle Pitts when we get to the end of the season.
What about Paris Campbell and Paris Hilton?
Both of them will equally fade into nothingness equally as quick.
So I really like chasing these minimum, like, wide receivers who are 4,000 and cheaper. They've just been hitting at an obscene rate this season, and I've been on all of them. And so I'm wondering if Kyle Phillips is in play at 3,600. I don't think so. He had that 9-target game in week 1, and then he's barely played at all. And he hasn't been on the injury report at all in those games, correct?
No. Yeah, he was hurt week 2, I think, and I haven't seen him. I can pull it up real quick, but
yeah. So I
finally played a little bit, like 2 weeks ago, and
18 snaps, 2 the week before that, 13 the week before that.
Let me see.
But the Raiders game he missed. That was when he was injured.
Yeah,
so it's still been weird.
I just looked at the injury report and I didn't see him on it, so I don't think
you
could just say that was injured.
Week 4, shoulder.
Yeah. Okay, so he's not in play.
Yeah.
Yeah, Westbrook-Akina is playing over him.
Ugh.
I think if you're doing a mini stack, it's Henry and a Colts wide receiver.
The other side is, Tannehill's averaging 25.2 pass attempts per game. That's like just above like Justin Fields and Daniel Jones. That's the other thing. Is like the volume is so shitty. Yeah. All right, guys. Packers Commanders. Packers are 5.5-point favorites. Over-unders 41.5. Let's see here. Mike LaFleur said that we'll see on Sammy Watkins. Keep in mind, Randall Cobb will miss the next couple of games here with an ankle injury. I think that's a part of the reason why Robert Tonyan got 12 targets last week. Or however many targets.
Why?
What's that?
Why?
Cobb got hurt in that game.
Right.
Yeah, he hurt his ankle. The other part with Tonyan is he just played a lot more, so I also don't know if they just finally gave him a full-time role. Anyway, we'll get there. Real quick, Commander side, Jahan Dotson, I think, tweaked his hamstring in practice yesterday. He's questionable. They're going to be without De'Ami Brown, and Logan Thomas is hurt, and also Dusty. Obviously, we have Heineke this week, Scott, but, things are setting up pretty well for Terry McLaurin. The problem is this game is just going to be so slow paced. Packers have been really slow for a couple years, and both of these offenses are 31st and 32nd in scoring possessions on the season. So it's a tough spot, but there's a few pieces in this game that are interesting for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Terry's legitimately in play. Green Bay hasn't been – they've been, fringe bottom 12 against wide receiver ones when that was never the case in previous seasons. Taylor Heineke just loves to chuck it up to his boy, Terry McLaurin, who had an obscene target share and was pretty productive. Diami Brown is out. Logan Thomas is out. Jahan Dotson probably isn't going to play. So you can make a compelling case for him. On the opposite side of the ball, again, I didn't write up the GPP quarterbacks thing, but you could also make a case for Aaron Rodgers. I get it. Like, this offense is incompetent, completely dysfunctional, but he has an easy top 3 matchup. Romeo Doubs and Alan Lazard have easy top 2 matchups. Doubs is a little bit better. That's also the John Hansen call of the week, who's been smashing with his number 1 low-owned guy of the week. Last week it was IU. The week before that it was, someone no one was on who dropped 35 points. And so, yeah, I really like Doubs. I think he's in play for cash this week. I'm not really getting into Robert Tonyan at all. That was his first game with double-digit fantasy points in like 12 straight games.
Yeah, it feels trappy.
Yeah.
And Watkins could be back too. They have to activate.
I think he will be.
Yeah, they have to activate him by tomorrow, but it seems like he's trending towards playing.
Yeah.
What would that mean for Lazard and Doubs?
I think it's still going to be that, committee where they rotate all 3 guys, though all 3 play like 75 to 80% of the snaps or whatever. But it's just another piece. Like, Rodgers isn't really all that cheap, but all the receivers are. So I think in like a 20 max, if you did, 20 Rodgers teams and rotated all 3 of them through with double stacks, I'm with you, Scott. I mean, this is we've hit the point in the season where we can point to teams that are good quarterback matchups. It's hard to run on Washington, but you can throw on them all day. So if Rodgers can't get it done here, then, maybe he should just retire after this week.
Well, I mean, that's the flip side of this spot, right? Is like we saw it last week. The Packers couldn't run on the Jets. Like this offense is kind of falling apart. So, I mean, I hope the Packers come out here and just sling it. Hopefully we get some downfield shots. That's the weird thing is like there's no intermediate game to this Packers offense. It's either like flats or screens or just deep shots. So this is definitely a really good spot. I think, Scott, to your question about Watkins, don't you think he would play slot more and then they would just keep Dobbs and Lazard outside? Because that's kind of what they've been doing. I think that kind of makes the most sense.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. But I feel like Watkins could be that guy that we're like, we don't know what's going to go on here. And then he's like immediately the wide receiver 1 or something because Rodgers has been so annoyed with everyone else.
Yeah. I mean, Lazard's playing well. I don't think he's annoyed with Lazard. But...
No, I mean, he's annoyed with everyone below Lazard.
Right.
He just seems to hate.
Yeah. Commander side, Scott, I'm with you on McLaurin. He's always a favorite GPP receiver of ours. Got to ask you about what do you think about Brian Robinson here? Because, like, okay, the pass game equity is bad. J.D. McKissick's going to have a role. I actually think J.D. McKissick's in play on DK. But what do you think about Brian Robinson here? I mean, the spot's great, and he had 17 of the 24 running back carries last week.
Yeah, I mean, I asked Brett to give me like one of his favorite plays of the week, and he did mention Brian Robinson. I'm just not really about it. He's the early down workhorse in a 3-way committee. The coach talked about getting Gibson more involved this week. And I like my very narrow pool of running backs this week. It seems easy, Josh Jacobs, Kenneth Walker, Breece Hall, Dameon Pierce, a few other guys. So I'm probably not going to chase guys like him, guys like Zeke. I'll just probably stick with that. And, running back is a little bit more predictable, and it has been the past few weeks, and try and chase upside and get unique with wide receivers.
Yeah, if it's a full-blown 3-headed Washington backfield, I just really have no interest. Brian Robinson has looked, congrats to him, but he's looked pretty terrible.
Yeah.
So
I hear you, dude. He really has not looked that good.
Congrats to him, though.
Yeah, for real. But yeah, I mean, he had for being 6'2", 235, I thought he had a great burst coming out of Alabama, but it has not been there.
Yeah, and I feel like it's just like he was like in a hospital bed for 2 weeks, and I just think that's a tough thing to come back from and just have that explosion right away. So he's a guy that I would not get rid of and I would hold on to, because by the end of the season I may be like eating this comment, but right now he's not a guy I would really have any interest in.
Do you think he just listens to Many Men by 50 Cent on repeat, like constantly? Like that has to be his go-to song in the car now.
How many times do you think he listened to it while he was at the hospital?
Just had it on continuous loop. Yeah, no, I'm with you. I got to bring it up just because Packers' run defense has been so bad and the volume's been there. But yeah, all right, we'll keep it going here. Bucks Panthers. Bucks have moved from, I think it was 10.5 on Tuesday. It's now 13. With the McCaffrey news, it'll probably get up to 14.
What McCaffrey news?
He has been traded to the West Coast, Best Coast. What? I know. All right.
Yeah, but people on Twitter said it won't even make the 49ers better, so just relax.
The takes on Twitter have been so bad. It's like the Panthers team running back is averaging 15 fantasy points per game, but the 49ers team running back is averaging only 11. So this is a horrible landing.
Yep. He's no better than Jeffrey Wilson.
Honestly, I give up on Twitter. I really do. The last 2 to 3 years has just broken everybody.
It used to be sharp. Like
I know. Just no one uses logic. Like it's just constant takes within AEKS. Yeah. I lost my spot. I'm trying to thought here, just thinking about all the McCaffrey discourse last night. Over-under's 40.5 in this game here, boys. Cam Brate's out. Mentioned that at the top, I think. K. Dotton's 2,700, Scott. I think you mentioned it, that this is a week where, or maybe Johnny did, but this is a week where we got Kelsey and Andrews at the top, and then we've got 2 really good rookies at the bottom, Otten being one of them. So kick us off here with basically just your thoughts on Tampa, because Carolina is dead.
Yeah, I mean, Otten's obviously a great play. 90% route share in week 5, 10.3 fantasy points and 7 targets. Over the last 3 weeks, Otten and Brate combined for 8.3 targets and 47 yards per game. That's really good production for a basically minimum price tight end. But like I said, there's 10 tight ends I really like this week. So you can pretty easily fade him in tournaments. But he's no doubt a good play despite a bottom 10 matchup on paper. Staying on Tampa Bay's side, Carolina is somewhat of a slot funnel defense. I think Godwin is maybe the second best wide receiver value of the slate. He's another guy who might not be fully healthy, but had 10 targets last week, played just about every snap. I thought he was like a horrible play last week, even though he was chalky just because of the game script concerns. But I mean, game script didn't go that way, and we played him every snap, and he's practicing in full now. Evans, you could also make a case for, though the matchup is slightly less good. He does have that touchdown upside. Leonard Fournette, Rachaad White's mixing in a bit more, but he's been more productive than ever. Really good usage in the passing game, despite White's existence. This is a game Tampa should truck, and you never know with Tampa whether Brady just wants to hog all the fantasy points to himself, or if he wants to, just win the game and play run heavy with a lead. So Fournette is a really good GPP play. Maybe Brady in play as a YOLO tournament option, although I really don't trust it because you saw him chewing out his offensive line last week, right? So what's interesting about that is he sucked 2 weeks in a row against Atlanta and Pittsburgh. Those are easily 3 of the worst pass rushes in football by pressure rate over expectation, which is one of the best stats in the game. And so if they couldn't get it done in those perfect matchups, I really worry about the offense as a whole. So maybe just Godwin. I think DJ Moore is legitimately interesting, and I know Johnny's about to mock me, so I'm not going to give him a chance.
I'm in on DJ Moore.
Wow, look at that. Hey. I love when my Galaxy brain takes get Johnny a little bit excited. So he has a 26% target share with PJ Walker, and that jumps to 40% if you exclude Robbie Anderson and CMC. And there was a report that just came out saying he's very likely to be traded. So you could go one of two ways with this. This is what they did last week with CMC, where it's just like, all right, let's get some really good tape out there on him and have him look good and have him touching the ball. Or maybe it's risky because they don't want him to get hurt before a trade. So, Johnny, I'll let you fine-tune that Galaxy brain tape.
Yeah, so I think if the Panthers hadn't had a defensive touchdown last week, I think they may have been forced. Everyone wants to cite that PJ Walker never threw the ball, 16 attempts or whatever. But I think if they don't have that defensive touchdown, then he would have had to throw the ball a little more. And then without McCaffrey, again, he's going to have to throw the ball because, Foreman and Hubbard are not good. So I think, DJ Moore is naturally the beneficiary of the CMC trade. And we've reached the point where, he's so cheap because he's been so horrible. But, he still got 7 targets last week. He didn't do anything with them. But I think, 7-8 targets for a guy like him, he has – the more opportunities you give him to, get a house call, the better. And he's not going to have any ownership. And then I do like Brady this week. Everyone, we talk about him being quote unquote bad against Atlanta. I don't think he was that bad. He just didn't score any touchdowns. He threw for 350 yards, completed 68% of his passes. And then I think he was missing for like 3 days before the Pittsburgh game. He went to Robert Kraft's wedding. Like, there's no way that you just like show up on Sunday and you're perfectly good to go when you miss like the, end of the week install. So I'm good with getting back on Brady, especially now that, because everyone played him, the prior 2 weeks, and now everyone's done with him. And he's facing a team that's like completely dead after everyone talked shit on him all week. So this could be like one of the angry Brady weeks, where he's like throwing at the 1 yard line instead of handing it off to Fat Lenny.
Yeah.
Unless his offensive line just hates him because he's a dick and they want to see him good.
They are like, those guys have already come out and said like they thought it was funny.
It's like your dad. It's like your dad who's never serious yelling at you or something. Like,
yeah, I did just want to say DJ Moore has a bottom 2 matchup on paper. Tampa Bay excellent against wide receiver ones, but 63% of PJ Walker's pass attempts came on screens last week. And so, like, there's not a cornerback in the league that can't just allow those free PPRs. So, I don't know. More DJ, more thoughts.
63% seems like quite a few. It seems like
it's pretty.
It seems like a little bit. Yeah. The other thing is, like, Scott, did you mention the trade narrative? I mean, they're clearly trying to move their pieces.
Yeah.
I think DJ Moore's probably safe, like, because he's so young still. But I got to think if somebody comes in with the right offer, they'd move him. Scott, you mentioned Godwin too. I think he's going to smash here, man. I mean, Carolina's allowing the 8th most yards per game to slot receivers, and Brady was wearing a freaking Godwin t-shirt in his presser 2 weeks ago. It's his boy. So I think he's just going to continue to feed him now that Godwin's maybe not 100% healthy, but he's back to his normal role here.
Within the hour, JASRI Football tweeted out DJ Moore is expected to be traded. That's a rumor. 116,000 followers. I don't know if this guy's legit, but he's probably just scraping it from some beat writer.
Yeah. I mean, it wouldn't be a surprise at this point. I think the only guys that are really safe is like Brian Burns and a couple other defensive guys. We have some offensive linemen that are locked down to longer-term deals, but Panthers have some assets, man. Like, in that trade yesterday was going to be real nice for them. All right, we'll keep it going here, guys. Giants, Jags, going to be a run-heavy game here between Barkley and the Jags, kind of leaning a lot more run-heavy. Really no injury notes. I mean, you don't care. Kenny Galladay's out. Kadarius Toney may or may not be in the NFL anymore. Still checking on that one. Bottom line is, I mean, this is going to be a super run-heavy game. I was looking into this. The Jags have actually been 8th in run rate over expectation, and they're 7th in run rate when the game has been within a score in the first 3 quarters. Over the last 5 weeks, Travis Etienne, Scott, is just running extremely hot. Looks absolutely fantastic. I mean, I think with the Jags leaning more run heavy and Lawrence kind of regressing, it's really hard to get excited about any of these Jags. So we'll get started on the Jags side, and then we'll talk through Barkley.
Yeah, Etienne is running hot, but the bottom line is 10 carries the last 2 weeks, 5 and 2 targets, played on under 50% of the snaps. Like I said, I like my narrow pool of running backs this week, but I did argue, when it looked really bad in week 2, week 3, week 4, I was saying, I think Etienne, you have to view him like a rookie, where after the team's bye or in the second half, he starts to get that lion's share of the work. I don't like the Jags. I've been a Jags doubter all season. I don't think I'm going to play anyone there. Evan Ingram's a little bit interesting in a revenge game, seeing really good volume the last few weeks. But I'm a former Giants fan, so I know the second I play him, he's going to drop 3 of his 6 targets. Giants side, yeah, the supermodel loves Saquon Barkley this week and last week because he's 7,900, but it's basically the supermodel is basically saying, no, this is this year's Jonathan Taylor, this year's Christian McCaffrey, so he should be, 1,600 more. And that's an interesting point. The problem, though, slow-paced, not a very good offense, but it is Saquon Barkley, who's awesome, but maybe also a little banged up. I like Wan'Dale Robinson at 4,500. Dable said his plan is to get him more work this week. And this is a guy I was extremely high on all offseason. So you see the price bump of 1,200 or whatever, and I don't think people are going to play him, but that seems more than reasonable to me. But upside's definitely a concern.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing is, like I said, the Giants are like right in the range with the Bears and the Titans in terms of their volume, but love seeing Wan'Dale go out there. I think he only ran 11 routes, got 4 targets last week. He'll be slot only, but Jags, secondary is not anybody I'm running away from. I'm with you. I think it's Barkley and Robinson from this game. Proctor, do you have anything else? Any other thoughts on this game here?
No.
Yeah.
I think I thought Etienne was going to get popular as people talked about him, but it doesn't seem like he's going to be all that popular. So if really no one's going to – he was a guy that I was like, well, I'm not going to play if everyone's going to play him. But if no one's going to play him, then I'd be okay with some, maybe with Jags defense. And then it seems like the Christian Kirk experiment has died.
Yeah, targets have dried up, and like I said, I think some of it's Lawrence just regressing. I was willing to give him a 1-game kind of reprieve because they played in a hurricane in Philly, but I mean, he's been really bad. I mean, I've watched every game, and it's bad, man. I mean, it was so bad last week that the Colts were clearly coming back in that game, and they just didn't throw the ball. Like, he just kept dialing up Robinson and Etienne, and a lot of the throws that Lawrence did make were not downfield, and we saw that in week 5. I mean, Lawrence could not beat cover 2. And they didn't do anything special. They just were sitting down in the cover 2. They played too high, and Lawrence couldn't beat it. He had nowhere to go with the ball. And where he did, he was late. I think this could be a week where the wheels really fall off for Lawrence, barring a turnaround of, him going back to where he kind of was in week 3 against the Chargers. Yeah, nothing more from this game. Let's keep it going. Browns-Ravens, final game of the early window. Ravens are 6.5-point favorites. Over-under is 46.5. Browns are really beat up, man. Wyatt Teller's hurt. He's not going to play in this game. He's been a big linchpin for the run game for a number of years now. Tyler Conklin's hurt as well. And obviously on defense, they've just been awful. Obviously a lot of injuries. To Clowney, Denzel Ward's out. Obviously Myles Garrett since the car accident. He's been hurt. So good spot here for the Ravens. Real quick, Rashad Bateman's limited in practice this week. I'm kind of expecting him to play. He jokingly said it's up to John Harbaugh for him to play. So it seems like Bateman is really, really close. And Mark Andrews is fine. I think they're just giving him a maintenance day. Wednesday and Thursday, he was back in practice and doing his normal stuff. Today, Proctor, I'll throw it to you first. You said Lamar is going to be the highest owned cash game quarterback. I think it makes a ton of sense. No Allen, no Hurts on this slate here. And this spot is fantastic. Browns defense, like I said, is really hurting.
Yeah, and I think Bateman coming back seems like he's going to be back. I think it's huge because these other wide receivers just can't really make plays. They can't really get open. And it just seems like the Ravens had nothing downfield when Bateman was not there. So I think getting him back sort of adds that, element of Lamar having the possibility of, those 40, 50-yard touchdowns that you're really just not getting. Mark Andrews is great, but he's not that guy. And I think Andrews should be good to go. It seems like he's a guy that when he's dinged up, they just like don't make him practice. So I'm not really all that concerned about him. It looks like this is Kenyon Drake's backfield too. So like him as well. And I think probably a get right spot for the Ravens to come back home. Bateman comes back. And Browns are beat up, and chance for the Ravens to show that they can, close the game. So I like Lamar a lot.
Yeah, I will say one thing to keep in mind this weekend, and I haven't seen anything on it today, is they can activate Gus Edwards, the 53-man. Greg Roman kind of made it seem like he's on track to be activated, so we'll see on that. If Edwards does play, it does ding Drake a little bit, but obviously Drake played well enough to earn more carries this coming weekend. I think they should get Justice Hill back this week too. But regardless, Scott, Lamar is a phenomenal play. On the Browns side, man, I really like David Njoku here. Obviously, he's been extremely involved in this offense. 81% route share the last 5 weeks. It's like third among tight ends behind like Kelsey and Ertz, and that's it. Target share has been really steady. He's not had like a huge target game, but this could be it with them facing the Ravens, having to throw a little bit more. I'm sure Scott Njoku is one of those 10 tight ends you were talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. He's near the top of the list. The bigger question for me is Mark Andrews, because I talked about this in the XFP report. Since week 14 of last season, only one player has more fantasy points than Mark Andrews. That's Cooper Kupp. By fantasy points per game, only Kupp, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Devontae Adams rank above him. He's averaging more fantasy points per game than Justin Jefferson, and yet Jefferson was 1,900 more expensive on DraftKings last week. But I think if you factor in positional scarcity, the value discrepancy there, I think it would maybe make more sense if Andrews was 1,900 more than Justin Jefferson. It's just so much harder to find spike weeks at the tight end position, especially cheap spike weeks, than at the wide receiver position. Only 2 tight ends on multiple games with at least 25 DraftKings fantasy points since week 14. That's Andrews with 6 and Kelsey with 3. That's 69% of all 25-plus DraftKings fantasy point games. So if he is really healthy, this is a key point for me. I don't see why he's not a must-play, even with Dulcich being sexy and having perfect hair and Kate Otten being a great value play. But Johnny, you're the jam-in cheap wide receiver guy. I think Andrews is more mispriced than any of those guys. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think in tournaments you're just playing Andrews, Kelsey, or the total punt guys. Like, I don't think there's any value in playing, Kyle Pitts, Robert Tonyan type guys, when Andrews is 3K more, especially on a slate like this where you don't really need the savings. And then I think this is probably like the rare slate where it's probably fine to play 2 tight ends if Andrews is one of the 2 that you're playing and you're considering him to sort of be a wide receiver at flex. But otherwise, yeah, you're just playing Andrews or you're playing those guys under 3K, Dulcich, Otten, or Moreau.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, it's kind of to your point too, Proctor, this week about the savings at quarterback. Like you said, we don't have Kupp, we don't have any quarterbacks. Like, you got to find a way to spend that money. Scott, I was going to ask you, do you have any interest in Chubb or any of these guys? It's just like, this is a really good running back slate. There's really no reason to get cute.
No, because people are going to want to play Chubb when they look at his fantasy point per game average. But Wyatt Teller is a massive piece to this offense. If you look back at Cleveland's top games by rushing yards over the last 3 or the last time he missed, it was all the games Teller played, and all the games he missed were their worst games, all under 115 rushing yards. The rest were all above like 140 rushing yards. Efficiency, same thing. So that's a narrative I don't think a lot of people are going to pick up on. So he's an easy fade for me. Rashad Bateman, by the way, or Devin Duvernay. Cleveland's giving up the second most fantasy points per game to outside wide receivers. They've been really bad. you can make an argument for Bateman, maybe, where it's just like, oh, this guy's good, and like maybe he's healthier, or Duvernay, because there was a tweet that like Harbaugh or someone said their game plan for this week was get Duvernay the ball with a exclamation point. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts there, but those are just some guys I know I needed to dig in deeper into later in the week.
Now I just imagine Greg Roman like sitting down with like a cigar and a glass of whiskey at the end of the night. He's been like, damn, what did I mess up on last week? I gotta get Devin Duvernay the ball more.
Okay,
what?
yeah.
If they get Bateman back, man, I think it's huge. Because Proctor, you said it, man. I think Bateman's the only dude who can do anything. They have Deshaun Jackson now, though. Hey.
Jamison Hensley, Ravens OC Greg Roman said one of his notes after the game was to get Devin Duvernay involved. It had an exclamation point after it, Roman said. I mean, Bateman wasn't a full-time player when he was healthy. He was at like 60% snapshot.
I think that's a legitimate concern. I think I was talking about this with Edwin in our show earlier, but like I think it's kind of what the Ravens want to do, man. Like they're a 12 personnel team. They run two tight ends. They play Patrick Ricard like a ton too. And those guys are extra blockers for Lamar. Like that it makes a lot of sense to not play a third receiver. So that's why we're going to see a rotation here.
Yeah, and they're not going to put Bateman out on those one wide receiver things as much because he's been dealing with that foot off and on. That they're not going to have him out there for like the obvious blocking wide receiver snaps.
Yep. That's another part of it too. All right, we'll keep it going here, guys. We're going to breeze through this one, except for to talk through a tight end and a running back. Jets Broncos. This opened at 3, 2.5. It's gotten pounded all the way down to Jets to 1. Broncos to 1. It's basically a pick 'em. Over under 39.5. I mean, at this point, there's nothing to even say about the Broncos, Scott. I mean, the only thing really we have to discuss is Greg Dulcich. He's obviously popping in hair models across the fantasy industry. He's going to pop in a lot of projection models too because he's stone in and he's running around on 65, 70% of the dropbacks last week. They clearly hate Alberto. So yeah, Dulcich is one of the best punt tight ends, and we'll kick it off there. And I'll let you talk through if you have any other interest in these Broncos.
Yeah, Dulcich is a great play. This is a player I loved. The prospect model loved. He had amazing usage last week. He ranked second in XFP among the receivers. I think he ranked third in route share. He was wide open on multiple plays. Like Russell Wilson was getting clowned on because he was just like wide the F open over the middle of the field, and Russell decided to take a sack instead. Minimum price tight end with this sort of usage. This is an every week must play, according to Johnny, I'm guessing based on the years I've known him. And I agree. He's an amazing play. You either just go all the way up or all the way down, or maybe David Njoku, something like that at the tight end position. Breece Hall, obviously just like amazing player, amazing talent. The team is going so massively run heavy these days. His participation in the run game is continually growing, 45%, 55, 65, last week, 73%. He started the game. My concern is this is a really good defense. This might be the best defense in football. And although Breece Hall is an amazing pass catcher, he only has 4 targets the last 2 weeks to Michael Carter's 3. So that's just a slight concern, but like obviously mispriced, obviously a great play. Cortland Sutton, I just need to mention because he's really popping as a top XFP buy low. That's certainly been the case for a number of weeks now. And then last week, only 3 targets. But he did have 11 targets or 10 plus targets in 3 of his other 5 games, 7 in the other 2. But yeah, I mean, this offense is a mess. Russell Wilson looks broken, etc. I'm probably not going to gamble on a Garrett Wilson, Corey Davis, Denzel Mims, but I think you can make a case for Garrett Wilson, although I'm probably not going to be the one to make that.
On the Broncos, man, I think we're almost at the point now where it's just like throw a weekly fade. Like Dulcich is min, and that's the only reason we're into him because he's a minimum price tight end and he's going to run 70% route share. But last week, the Chargers benched J.C. Jackson in the second half. It was that bad. J.C. Jackson was playing that poorly, and the Broncos had negative net passing yardage. Like this offense is broken, and I mean they have a 19.5 team total at home against the Jets.
Oh boy.
I think Dulcich, Johnny, I'll let you be the deciding factor. I mean, the Dulcich is 2,500, and you're obviously getting a lot of savings, but man, I mean, the floor is still zero. I mean, it's still zero.
Yeah, it's depending how high his ownership gets. This is the worst game environment of the week. And generally for tight end, we hope to have a good game environment because we want touchdowns. So I think in GPPs, like in the Millie Maker, he's probably just like an X out type play. But in smaller field tournaments, I think he's a pretty strong play. Just not sure that he's a better play than Otten or Moreau at ownership. But I think, if you're playing a mid-size 20 max, I think Dulcich, is it Dulcich? I don't even know.
I think it's Dulcich.
Dulcich, Otten, and Moreau and Andrews are probably the only four that you should have.
He's going to be the highest owned just because he's so much more fun,
Yeah, but as the field size, because of that, as the field size gets bigger, I think you should be considering removing him from your pool because, a 2,500 Denver tight end in a 38, what is it? What's the total in this game? 38?
38. Yep.
If he's going to be 30% owned or so, he's not really a guy that you should be playing. I mean, he was like the best play on the slate, for showdown, but he was $200.
Yeah. And I mean, especially Proctor, there's other punt tight ends. I mean, there's Otten, we'll talk through in this game, Raiders Texans. Foster Moreau is obviously going to be in play this week with no Darren Waller. He's dealing with a hamstring injury. Hunter Renfrow is banged up too. He's got a hip injury. I think he's going to play, but he's hurt, man. I mean, he's been going through a number of injuries this year. Real quick, Raiders are 7-point favorites. Over is 45.5. I think this is a really good spot, man, for the Raiders. I think everybody's having fun dunking on Josh McDaniels, but I think the Raiders are much, much better than their record implies. I'm not saying they're going to make the playoffs. I'm not saying they're going to go on a run or anything like that. I just think they're a much better team than 1-4. Their offense is third in points scored per drive. Once again, their defense stinks, but I think points per drive is probably one of the best stats we have just for overall correlation to future success. And Raiders have been really strong. They've also led a bunch and just lost in one-score games. Proctor, this is an amazing spot. 7-point favorites. Josh Jacobs, man, we got to talk through him. I mean, he's going to be super, super mega chalk, but he has been absolutely smashing. And I want you to take a bow, even though, I guess your avatar could take a fake bow. But you were one of the few guys who stuck with Josh Jacobs, and I ended up drafting him a few times in best ball, only because you were mentioning him. Let's talk through your boy Jacobs, and I mean this is the spot for him.
Josh Jacobs, my king, who was on all of my best ball teams with a dead Trey Lance and dead Tua Tagovailoa. Putting up 140 points a week with 0 quarterbacks. But Jacobs is the best play on the slate. He's going to get 25 plus touches against Houston. And there's really not a whole lot more to say about him. He's going to be massively owned, but like Scott said earlier, if you're going to eat chalk, you eat it at running back. He's the best running back play on DraftKings by a good margin. And so I think you shouldn't really have any concern about playing him on your teams. I would X out other guys before I X out Jacobs. And then on FanDuel, he's more appropriately priced. So I think if you're going to make teams without Jacobs, I would do it on FanDuel where, he's only 600 less than Derrick Henry. And then, but if you do want to get contrarian, I think, you play Derek Carr with Adams and Moreau and just hope that Jacobs doesn't get those touchdowns. But I think this game has a chance to be better than you would think. Houston has been a little more scrappy the last few weeks since they have, given up on Rex Burkhead experiment and just let Dameon Pierce do his thing. But I think Las Vegas pretty much rolls.
Yeah, both teams coming off a bye. But yeah, I'm with you. I mean, this is an amazing spot for Raiders. Texans side, man. I mean, I guess it really is just Pierce. Scott, do you have any interest in Cooks or Collins? I mean, I know Nico Collins he's outscored Brandon Cooks, hasn't he? I mean,
yeah. So
the matchups just
Davis Mills, I think, is legitimately interesting in the sense that this is an easy top 3 matchup on paper. Part of the problem with that is Las Vegas is really good against outside wide receivers, really bad against slot wide receivers. And I don't think you want to play Chris Moore, although he's 100 off of minimum price. But that makes me nervous about Brandon Cooks, who, by the way, has done nothing all year, but also Nico Collins, who, believe it or not, ranks top 20 in yardage market share, has bested Cooks in receiving yards in, I think, 3 or 4 straight games. Really underrated production and volume relative to his 4,200 price tag. But again, this on-paper matchup isn't great for those 2 perimeter wide receivers. If you're an MME guy like a Darren, I would consider some slight exposure to Chris Moore, although he probably does nothing. Las Vegas, hey, no Darren Waller, right? Maybe it's Hunter Renfrow. Hunter Renfrow smashed last year without Darren Waller. I don't think so. Houston is the best defense against slot wide receivers. I see him popping as a value on a number of sites, but like you mentioned, he's hurt, and this isn't a great matchup. No one's going to play Devontae Adams, but like the usage has been there. It's a great matchup. He's going to be shadowed by an inexperienced rookie cornerback who has given up a lot of production. And Adams is unique in the sense that he is the only wide receiver who does better in shadow games, because that probably means he's not being bracketed. And he watches an insane amount of tape on every cornerback to find their weaknesses and tells. Foster Moreau, again, in my eyes, he's right there with the Cade Otton and Dulcich's of the world. Last year, he averaged 8.8 fantasy points per game in the 6 games Waller missed, 14.1 fantasy points per game in the top 50% of those games. But more importantly, within this new regime, the last 2 games he played prior to injury, Waller was fully healthy in those games. He ran a route on 39% of the team's dropbacks, averaged 4.5 targets and 37 yards per game. So to give you a sense of his upside, should we just double that and get 9 targets and 75 yards per game? Probably not, but he does have a fringe top 12 matchup. And like I said, upside, he's really right there with Ott and Dulcich. It's basically a tie for me if I'm being totally truthful. But we missed, or at least I didn't hear you guys talk about Dameon Pierce. Josh Jacobs obviously is the best play of the slate on DraftKings, but Dameon Pierce doesn't have the matchup working in his favor, doesn't have game script working in his favor, but he has seen a massive uptick in usage to where he's seeing legitimately rare, unique, highest end bell cow usage, and his receiving work is trending up, which is crucial for this bad Houston offense and a bottom 3 offensive line. But he's just really good. He's probably their best player on offense, and they're feeding him as such. So he ranks as probably a top 5 running back play on paper for me.
Would you would you play, like, how contrarian do you want to get to play him and not Jacobs? Would you play like Devontae Adams? I mean, I guess you can.
JM to win is always talking about had to have it scores, and like Devontae is damn near the top of the list when you're talking like that. What the biggest issue with him is he ranks dead last among all of the top 20 wide receivers by targets in catchable target rate. Derek Carr is just not throwing him accurate passes. He's not targeting him when he's wide open, which is happening a frequent amount. And when he is targeting him, it's when he's, has a cornerback draped over him. They just don't have great chemistry right now. This Josh McDaniels offense is difficult to learn. To me, he seems like one of those guys where I'm not going to have any exposure. And then he goes off, and I'm like, well, I talked about him on the show, but I didn't end up playing him. But yeah, I'm probably not going to play him. But that makes sense as a contrarian build, Pierce and Adams. I just think you play Josh. I mean, this is what I've been saying is I like my narrow running back pool. I think I just eat the running back chalk. There's great value, and I get unique elsewhere.
Yeah, it's a good week to get funky with stacks and receivers too, to that point, Scott, with the backs. So yeah, I'm with you. All right, we'll talk through Seahawks Chargers next, game of the week from a scoring perspective. Total is over under 51, highest on the slate. Chargers have gotten bet down. It was 6.5. I think I saw some 5s this morning when I was looking. So a little bit of money coming in on the Seahawks. Injury notes. Keenan Allen, I have no idea what's going on here. He has been limited for like the whole week. We'll see.
Sounds like he might play.
Yeah, it seems like he's trending that way, and they need him because Josh Palmer is in concussion protocol and Donald Parham is too. So we'll have like a little skinnier usage tree for the Chargers this week, especially if Keenan's back. Proctor, I'll just throw it to you first, man. I mean, no Palmer, no Parham. I mean, it's like all Keenan, Mike Williams, and Ever here.
Yeah, if Keenan plays, I really like Justin Herbert. They have really been missing Keenan the last few weeks because Josh Palmer stinks. He's just not good at football, and that whole thing. Yeah, that experiment is over. So I think, Mike Williams will be able to get into his more natural role where he's not like a 15 target guy, but Allen is. And I think because we don't know if Allen's going to play for sure until 4:00, hopefully we get a little more news. I think the Herbert double stacks with DK Metcalf on the other side are probably one of my favorite tournament setups, because I think this is probably like the best game of the week, and no, people aren't going to play these guys. Like Lockett buried everyone last week. Metcalf buried everyone last week. They're not going to play Keenan because they don't know if he's playing. Mike Williams has been terrible. No one's going to play him. People are only going to play. They're going to play Eckler, or they're going to play Walker in a game that's projected for the highest total in the week, and people are only playing the running back. So I love this game.
Yeah, I love this game too. It easily topped my pace model this week. Seahawks are playing fast, throwing a ton. Obviously, we know the Chargers push the pace and throw a bunch. And to your point with Keenan, man, like it's pretty clear they've missed him. I mean, I think Brandon Staley's a fake sharp, honestly. I mean, I know he's a defensive-minded coach, but Joe Lombardi he's just a stone-cold donkey. I mean, the fact that we can't get Mike Williams off of Patrick Surtain last week is just ridiculous. But if Keenan's back, it'll at least give them their best receiver. Scott, you were all over Lockett, or fading Lockett last week, I should say. He's still on the injury report. He has a hamstring injury. He is questionable for this game. I actually just saw a tweet from Brandon Staley, Keenan Allen's game time call. So hopefully we'll see something Saturday on him or Sunday morning. But Scott, I mean, if Lockett's legit hurt, I mean, DK Metcalf is going to get funneled the ball. I mean, Gino's been targeting his guy. I think I have a stat somewhere, but the 9 games that Gino and DK have played, DK's seen at least like 24% of the targets in every game. Obviously, some of the overall volume's been bad because Seahawks don't throw enough, but in some of those games. But man, DK is a really, really good play this week.
Yeah, again, this is something Johnny and I have talked about for years. I have a dang stat somewhere I need to dig back up, but Lockett is notorious for playing through brutal injuries when he probably shouldn't, and his production just totally drops off a cliff. But whenever he's healthy, he's like a wide receiver 1 easy, and he's great. I think that's what's going on. Again, if I'm being completely honest, I like Matt Ryan more than Geno Smith this week, even though every other site has Smith as the top value. Although, like Johnny said, you're going to be playing Lamar Jackson in cash. DK Metcalf, yeah, this is like Sutton, one of my top buy low XFP regression candidates. He's the wide receiver 10 by salary on DraftKings, wide receiver 15 on FanDuel. But he ranks 5th among all slate eligible wide receivers in XFP per game. This is a top 6 matchup for him. And again, Lockett's, I think, hurt, so that should funnel more work in Metcalf's direction. With Keenan back, I like Austin Eckler significantly less. If you take out just one game, he's averaging 32 rushing yards per game. He doesn't have a single game over 55 receiving yards, and he ranks nearly dead last in yards per target. Granted, massive slate busting potential, massive touchdown upside. He's really good. I get it, but he's right now just what's holding him afloat and getting him week to week to these spike weeks is that massive, 9 reception, 9 PPR floor. And I think Keenan coming back really puts a damper on that, although dependent on how healthy he is. Gerald Everett I like because when Donald Parham was out, he saw a massive uptick in route share, but also receiving yards. I think he went over 65 receiving yards in 3 of the 4 games Parham was out. There's only 4 other tight ends to have at least 3 games with 65 yards. He also has an easy top 3 matchup on paper. We remember what TJ Hawkinson did to this Seattle defense not too long ago. So I think he's another interesting tight end. Justin Herbert, like you said, is an amazing GPP play. And then Kenneth Walker is right now our RB2 in DraftKings projections. I asked John to move that down, but I mean, I'm there in the sense that I think he's easily the second best play of the slate. No Travis Homer, so he's going to get 100% of the running back targets. We just don't know if that's 1 target, 2 targets, maybe 4 targets. And that's an important point because he doesn't have game script working in his favor. They're 5-point underdogs, but he does have the perfect on-paper matchup. Chargers are giving up the most yards per carry to opposing running backs, bottom 5 in rushing fantasy points per game allowed. And so this guy is seeing Rashad Penny plus usage by a margin, better than anything Penny had over his recent hot streak where he was averaging 18 fantasy points per game and 25 fantasy points per game in wins. And he's really good. So he's going to be a chalky option, and I'm firmly there on that. I don't know that I have any other thoughts behind that. There is a 3,000 priced Chargers wide receiver whose name is escaping me, but I'm not sure I'll play him.
Is it Jalen Guyton? Or is
No.
No.
Jalen Guyton tore his ACL when they were playing him with no time left on the clock when they couldn't come back.
That's
because
right.
Brandon Staley's a fake sharp.
Yeah. Dude, I that last
Michael Brandy.
Yeah. Liked him in preseason. That's what
he had a great preseason.
Yeah, he did. Bro, that
Are you on him?
He's probably a guy who would end up on my Herbert doubles, but not a guy that I would play by himself.
He's white though.
Your DK lineup can only have one white guy, and this week it has to be Pierce. So
Yeah.
Okay.
This isn't week 3 of preseason.
We got to recalibrate the white guy model when it includes Pierce. I could not believe Brandon Staley at the end of that game last week, man. They had the ball in 3 timeouts in 1:40, and they have Justin fucking Herbert, and he turned him into Joe Flacco. They could have won that game in regulation. Anyway, whatever. I was going to mention, man, Ken Walker over 67.5. I got it yesterday. I think Tom was on it too. It's already moved to 69.5. Not only is Ken Walker my guy and just an amazing player in general, Seahawks, schematically, their run game has been fucking all year. Rashad Penny was ripping off big gains. I think they're top 5 in yards before contact. So even though the game script isn't great, Chargers could get out to a lead. The spot, Scott, your point is fantastic. Proctor Jacobs is going to be 40%, but Walker is probably going to be the second highest owned, and then a huge gap between the third guy, right?
Yeah, I think the chalk trio that people are going to do is probably, and I think it'll be Mixon or Eckler, but I think people are going to start with Walker and Jacobs, and then go from there.
Yeah,
probably Brees. I'd say, or maybe there's just not enough guys to pay up for this week.
Yeah, I think it'll be. I mean, Brees, I think, comes in after that. I think Eckler and Mixon might be. Probably, actually, all 3 of them will probably be pretty close.
Yeah. I was going to mention, Scott, I think you were talking through Gerald Everett. No Parham this week is huge. Parham got 3-4 targets last week, so Everett should be getting most of the looks. I like him a lot in Herbert doubles if you're going to go that route. Trying to think, is there any other thoughts on this game here before we get to Chiefs-Niners?
I think on Keenan, I think if he plays, like the way he's been talking, I think if he plays, he's good to go.
It really.
Johnny, I just want to hear what your Chargers stack looks like.
What do you mean?
Herbert, Everett, Eckler.
I'll be playing Keenan if he plays.
I just really worry about that health, but I mean, otherwise.
Well, that's what for me, I think if he plays, he's healthy.
I agree, because I saw a quote from Keenan this week basically saying, like, man, I feel good, but it's like I can't go out and like be full go, and I'm not going to play. And I think he's almost there.
Seattle.
Got to keep Seattle. In mind, like, he's 30. Like his hamstrings aren't 22 anymore.
Seattle ranks second best against outside wide receivers, 9th worst against slot wide receivers.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think they have some big body outside guys that can, limit Williams, and I think they need Keenan to show up and play well. So, yeah, it'd be Keenan, Eckler, Everett. I mean, I would have some Williams too. I would just sort of rotate them, but Keenan would be my staple on my Herbert doubles if he plays.
Nice. All right, guys, we'll wrap it up with Chiefs-Niners. Kind of a stinky line here. Chiefs getting 3. Over-under's 48. I'm just monitoring these Chiefs cornerback injuries throughout this weekend. Obviously, the big news is this Niners defense, guys, is just absolutely destroyed by injuries. Obviously, Bosa's hurt, Jimmy Ward's hurt, Eric Armstead's been hurt. They lost Javon Kinlaw, he's on IR. They lost Emmanuel Mosley, he's on IR. And then now they have their stud young safety, Hufanga, in concussion protocol, along with another corner. So we'll see, man. We'll get the final Niners injury report later this afternoon, but they're really beat up coming into this game. I was trying to write Mahomes off the slate earlier. Shouldn't have done that. He's a good play this week for sure, Proctor. So give us your thoughts on Mahomes, Chiefs, Kelsey, and any other thoughts here on this Chiefs side.
Yeah, this one's tough because Mahomes is just so annoying with who you're playing him with. But obviously, I think the Mahomes and Kelsey pairings are good with San Francisco beat up. I don't think Mahomes is going to catch much ownership just because of the fact that he's so hard to stack with. I think a lot of people will play him with Juju. I think it's probably a week to get back on MVS, who was more popular than Juju last week. Now Juju will probably be more popular this week. So I think you just kind of play the guys that people aren't playing because we don't really know who it's going to be week to week. I think this is a really good week for Debo. We've seen what KC has had done to them by those types of wide receivers, just getting dusted by guys who have open field moves because for whatever reason, I feel like the Chiefs have not been able to tackle for like 11 years. So I do like Jimmy a little bit. But if you're playing Jimmy, you have to pair him with 2 of these guys because he's not really doing much on his own. He's going to need these guys to do the work for him.
Yeah.
I think Mahomes is going to be my highest owned quarterback in tournaments. Okay. Really wish we had 2 on the slate. That would have been awesome. But like you said, I think people are scared of San Francisco's defense just based on the numbers they're looking at. But, I mean, they played Justin Fields in a monsoon, Geno Smith, Russell Wilson, who stinks, Matthew Stafford, who stinks, Baker Mayfield, who stinks, P.J. Walker, who averaged 10 yards per attempt, and then Marcus Mariota, who scored 25 fantasy points on 14 pass attempts with a perfect passer rating. Like you said, devastated by injuries. It's Patrick freaking Mahomes. He's tricky to stack. So I might just go all in and then just have 5 lineups where I'm trying out different combinations. But that is the tricky thing this week. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on Kelsey, Kittle, Ayuk, Debo, McCaffrey's probably not in play. But, I mean, I don't know. He could score a few touchdowns. MVS is cheap.
I don't think McCaffrey plays all that much. I think if he does, it'll be like a couple red zone plays here and there. He literally just landed and showed up at practice. I love Debo. His prop reopened at 58.5. I think that's like one of the easiest overs of the year. So if you have access to books in your spot, go get Debo at 58.5 right now. I think he's just on the play. That's the guy.
You can't play McCaffrey, but Kansas City is giving up like more receiving fantasy points than like 10 defenses are giving up total running back fantasy points. Would be the perfect matchup for his debut if he got a full workload, but that's highly doubtful. I don't know. Let me dig into some more matchup stuff.
Okay.
I mean, Jimmy G, is he kind of in play?
I think he is too. Chiefs opponents are averaging, I had it right here, 45.7 pass attempts per game, second most. Chiefs run defense has been pretty good too. I think he's kind of in play, but I think you're on Matt Ryan over Jimmy G, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. It's close though. I do like it.
I'm seeing good matchups for Debo, Ayuk, and MVS.
Dude, I'm just not overthinking. I think it's just Debo week. I think Kittle's fine, but we've been talking through tight ends this whole slate. I mean, it's Andrews and Kelsey or punt.
Yeah, and then you just have to play Kelsey if you're playing Mahomes. That's just like all of his passing fantasy points are going through Kelsey. Is Kelsey plus Andrews too galaxy brained? I mean, they're basically outscoring every other wide receiver on the slate. It's too galaxy brained.
Proctor, you got any thoughts?
I think for this game to really pop, you need to see like a classic Debo or a classic Kittle game. I think Ayuk's fine, but I think he's really between the three. He's not really the guy who I feel like can just like rip the game open.
Yeah. Like I said, man, I just think it's Debo week. Like if you're going to stack up this game, I think Debo is a must because he's the way they break out. This game has, if this game is going to go over the total, Debo's like the one guy who can single-handedly break it.
Kittle has had an 80% route share and a 20% target share in back-to-back games. That's like really rare usage, especially this season. And he averaged 19.2 fantasy points per game in those games last year, hitting at least 16 fantasy points nearly 75% of the time. The rest of the time, he averaged 9.1. So if that usage sticks, we could go back to seeing the Kittle of old relatively quickly. Again, this is for Darren. If I'm Darren, I'm having some fun with our optimizer this week and just trying out a bunch of different combinations because if you think this game goes over, like even Juju Smith-Duster is in play because the thesis doesn't revolve around him. It's just Mahomes doing Mahomes things in a good matchup, an underrated matchup.
Yeah. I'm by the way, I'm all the way with you on Niners defense being overrated. I think Mahomes is a great tournament play. Boys, this has been great. We're running on an hour and a half. Ben's got to do another show here in about 20, so we're going to skip the lineup section. A couple of notes before we get out of here. Make sure you guys are checking out our props tool. We have live prop data coming in from all the.
Wait, let's do a lineup after the show. Okay. That way people stick around through this ad read.
Do we have time, Ben? I guess we do. It's 2:40. Ben says 5 minutes. Okay. I was going to say prop tool, man. All of our projections are linked up to our prop tool. It's fantastic. Like you just go in. I just was searching up Debo. You can go find the best number, best juice, best price for whoever you're looking for. We also have like It's sorted by the biggest discrepancies, either in terms of over or under based on our projections. So make sure you definitely go check out the Prop Finder. The way you find it, from the homepage, fantasypoints.com, go to research and news. It's right in the middle under DFS and betting. Prop Finder is the second tool from the bottom. Make sure you use it this weekend. Let me pull up a fresh window.
Also, the college football package, they're slashing their prices soon. I don't know if you're into college football, but like we legitimately just have the best college football product in the game. Wes Huber's a savant. All of his guys are absolutely killing it. They're geniuses. This is great for Debbie. This is great for Dynasty. But more importantly, college football DFS is significantly easier. There's just way fewer sharps. Chalk is much worse. And anyone who's playing college football DFS, they're in our Discord for the college football Discord. They are printing money in DFS. So definitely give that package a try. Again, we're slashing prices on that very soon. Ben can tell me when that is. Also, shout out to Teeny in Discord, who's going to be doing a write-up on this show, a little condensed TLDR on some of our guys. I read that every week just to remember who I'm missing, and he does an amazing job with that. Again, after this week, college football will be priced down to $30 for the remainder of the season, so check that out.
Yeah, good call, man. They've been printing on props and futures and stuff. I know Forno was on the Tennessee quarterback, slipping my mind. Anyway, he was on his Heisman overs, and now the dude's like, I think he's like the front runner. He gave that a couple weeks ago. So, yeah, we've been all over it. Ben, I can't see. Am I good for sharing? Yep, I see it now. Never mind. Let's do a lineup here real quick. We got a couple minutes here. Proctor, I'll throw it to you first, man. Where do you want to start?
Well, so we doing like a midfield type thing?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's just go ahead and start with Jacobs and just eat that.
Locking in. Scott, do you want to go ahead and lock down Kenny Walker? Just play all the chalk, or do you have another back that you feel strongly about?
Jacobs and Walker. Let's just make it easy on ourselves, boys.
Down for that. Stack, Scott, I'll throw it back to you. You said you were on Mahomes. We could easily fit Mahomes Kelsey with these two backs. You want to go there? Or this? Well.
Yeah. And then Debo, right?
Yeah, good call. Okay, hold on. Mahomes. I just want to see real quick what this does if we just lock in this core. Real quick. Let's see what it spits out. Colts D, Dulcich at tight end. Oh, shoot. I forgot to put in Kelsey. Oops. Still likes Dulcich. Yeah, so that's what's going to be putting out, I think, this week is a lot of two tight end, Johnny. You're going to see a lot of two tight end builds.
Yeah, maybe it's not as good if people are going to end up getting it naturally from optimizers.
Yep, our optimizer is going to love Pierce this weekend. I need to bet his over. But I actually I like this build. What's Longdale's price? Longdale's 45 too. Yeah, I like that build. All right, I'm gonna save this here, boys. Let's get out of here. Ben's got another show here, guys. Stick around. Tom and Joe are gonna be talking through best bets of this week. I'm sure Tom's on some good props this week. He's on Debo with me, so we'll be hopefully celebrating some Debo money, and I hope you guys are celebrating some DFS money this weekend. Hope you guys have a great week in those streets. For Johnny, for Scott, for Ben behind the glass, I'm Graham. We'll catch you guys next week.